Are you looking for something affordable, unique, and fun to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High quality metal pin back buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $33 for 100 buttons shipped in the US. Message me at Everything Remade on IG to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you that we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. You can sign up there to get music sneak peeks, read the zines that I've done, and much more. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Leaden Tomb by Prisoner, featuring my new pal, Adam Lake, on synthesizer and other noises. I've been listening to Adam's bands for a really long time, so it was great to be able to chat with him.
I had asked my uncle Mark because we watched Wayne's World together, and he called out that song Bohemian Rhapsody that Queen did because it's such a pivotal part of that movie. And I was a tiny middle schooler at the time, I think, and I was just like, oh, that song was like overly dramatic and cool. And he knew about it, and knew some stuff about music and things like that. So he was just like, he did traditional, audiophile uncle stuff of just being like, cool, I'll put it on a tape for you and you can listen to it. So that in itself is not a mixtape, but on the A side, he did put whatever album Bohemian Rhapsody was off of. But on the B side, he put Nirvana's Nevermind on there. And that was like my first introduction to even the idea of like a mixtape, that you combine these things and you can share music in this way. And those were like the two artists that my uncle put on that tape for me.
Yeah. And do you feel like that was a pivotal point for your, like, sort of music listening journey?
I think so. I really do think so. Because I feel like I don't know how much of that was like a catalyst, but an amazing like jump start of a first step, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that time, and I think what you'll find about me and talking to me about music is I not to drop the traditional line of like I listen to everything, but I do have like a wide range of taste. And I feel like a lot of that sort of openness to exploring and people kind of helping me and my uncle being like, you probably will like Nirvana too, because Nirvana is great type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think really helped kind of expose and let me be a little bit more open-minded. And it came at like a critical point when I was starting to be more aware of music and be kind of like infatuated about how it even works and how it comes across and all like the maybe was around the same time.
I was losing the end of that answer there a little bit for some
Oh,
reason.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah. So do you feel like there was an artist that came along later that really pushed you? Like, were you already playing music at that point, or was it something later that made you sort of turn around and say, "Hey, I've always liked music, but this is something that I got to do with my life now"?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure I had more optimistic moments and connections with music back then, and I probably felt like, hey, I want this to be a major part of my life for sure. I don't think I've ever had in my mind that could be solely my life. But I think what it comes down to is I stumbled upon Nine Inch Nails like pretty early in my life. And I think that just got me infatuated with music, with production, with keyboards, with technology, with like it still being like a rock band and they're still presenting themselves as a rock band at the time. I feel like Nine Inch Nails and listening to Nine Inch Nails as a youngster was like my big pathway into being like, hey, this is something that I want to be a part of. And I don't think I ever had like grand illusions of being a performer. I feel like I'm really good at like an auxiliary person behind the scenes. So I knew I wanted to be part of music in some way, in some form. I think even like in high school, I was like, I wonder what it'd be like to be like a engineer in the studio for Nine Inch Nails. Not, I wonder what it would be like to be Trent Reznor, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like a really good era for stuff like that too. Like that's when like Psalm 69 came out, and
Mm-hmm.
there was just a lot of really good stuff that was sort of fusing those buzzsaw guitars and all those like digital and synthesizer effects and everything like that. I'm really not well versed in synthesizer at all, so I sound like just someone's grandma trying to like explain how the VCR works or whatever to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. But
Don't sell yourself short. I feel like if I'm stacked up to somebody who's really into modular synth, I would sound like somebody's like uncle or aunt explaining how a VCR works.
yeah.
Those like synthesizer nerd, I very much respect it, but I cannot wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's not something like I had a friend that was talking about one and being like, this is so good for this price, and like anybody who's ever wanted to look into this should get one at this price. And my wife had wanted to do stuff like that for a long time, and so I bought it for her for like her birthday or Christmas or something. It was like $180, and
Mhm.
and yeah, we do not know what to do with it. We made cool noises with it. Our children enjoy playing with it, but I have no idea. And it's until I tried to base like a whole project around it or whatever, I never will know what to do with it. But it's
Well, I mean,
fun,
I,
and that's all that really matters, I guess.
that is exactly that's all that really matters. And I think you just wrapped up my experience with writing keyboard parts on the first Moth EP. Was I don't know what I'm doing. That's a cool sound. This is fun. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But the Nine Inch Nails thing is interesting because I feel like I kind of progressed on liking Nine Inch Nails and stumbling into Ministry and Psalm 69, as you were saying. Really fucking cool. But I really gravitated, especially looking back, into exploring a lot of bands that could pull off being a live rock band, and a keyboard is still like a major component, but it's not like overly produced like the later era Nine Inch Nails stuff, or it isn't relying on backing tracks. And so I always gravitated myself to these bands that had more of a synthesizer, and try to explore and ask, record store clerks, since this is while I was still dealing with a 56.6K BPS modem and I couldn't download stuff like we do nowadays.
Yeah.
And some other like really pivotal bands that I really got into at that time was Faith No More, but also like the Get Up Kids in the Anniversary. Like I love the way that James and I forget the keyboard player in the Anniversary name approach writing these like monophonic lead type of parts in the wild like pop punk and punk setting. I was just like infatuated just like with people playing keyboards amongst a rock band.
The first Anniversary LP is unmatched.
Unmatched,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, I think their second LP is okay, but like that first one is, oh my goodness, it's unmatched. There's no one gets close. It's wild.
It's wild, and I used to love the Get Up Kids. And then somebody was like, "You like the Get Up Kids? Check out the Rentals and this Memory Plan and the Anniversary." And I just like checked out the Anniversary first, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna sit on this one for a while because this is amazing." Have you ever had a chance to see the Anniversary? I think you're in the Midwest.
Unfortunately, no, I haven't. I think they're the kind of band that like they blew up like pretty much right away. And anything more than a couple hundred people at a show is really not necessarily my scene. Like, it's very, very rare where I'll go to a show like that. So, yeah, I never did.
I hear you, and as I become older, I have that same sort of reflection. I was really happy to be able to see them at this small club in Richmond called Twisters,
Uh huh.
um, which turned into Strange Matter,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
think had a recent claim to fame in the past couple of years. But anyways,
Yeah, I played Strange Matter before at
yeah.
at at the Swamp Fests. But
Oh yeah, yeah, the
yeah, yeah,
Swamp.
good
Yeah,
times.
so that was the cap room that the club oversold hundreds of tickets for this like Get Up Kids anniversary show back in the day.
Oh no. Not a stranger to controversy, that Strange Matter, from what I understand. But
Oh my gosh! So like during that Get Up Kids, sorry if this is an aside.
no, it's we're here for that.
Cool. There was a fight happening. So in Richmond at the time, there was a couple different straight edge moshing beat 'em up crews around town. One was
Hmm.
called 804 and another one was called Gorilla Crew. And they're always starting all these fights and beefs with people. And for some reason, there was members of this crew at this show, and they started beating up on the sound person that was going around with the Get Up Kids and the anniversary. And the anniversaries had to like cut their songs like short to be like, you need to calm down and stop punching people. And then
That's
they just started getting into shouting matches with each other. But it turned into an online disagreement. But the form of the online disagreement was the anniversary's guest book. If you remember guest books from way back.
yeah.
And it was just this amazing moment of time of just being like, I'm going to wreck your crew, like back and forth on the anniversary's message or guest book at the time.
What a time capsule that is. And what
Mm-hmm.
a weird show to be getting bloodied.
Yeah.
Like what a weird show. Like, this is not Earth Crisis. This is not like, what are we doing here? Yeah, that's so
I,
weird. I
I
can't
think,
I can't imagine D and Detroit being on and just like, like D and Detroit more like your teeth on the floor, I don't know.
oh, that's great, Edie.
I don't. Yeah, that's wild. Um but yeah, just there are a lot of bands to me that I'm like, I will put like one or two of their songs up there with that caliber, like That Dog has like a couple songs that you're like, oh yeah. And you mentioned Rentals, like they have a couple songs that you're like, like Friends of P comes to mind, where you're like, yeah, those songs are up there, but as a whole, like, just that album's perfect, that first album. But anyway, so was that the first instrument that you tried to play? You went straight into keyboards, or were you
Not,
doing other things once you decided you want to get into a band?
yeah, no, no, I kind of ended up on keyboards out of laziness, I felt like. I was involved, so I went to like a suburban high school and middle school, and I got started playing clarinet and the bands for all my grade school years. Um, so I got a little bit of a theory and a little bit of an understanding of like monophonic, just like one note at a time type of playing through the clarinet, and got a little bit of an eye opening into that. I never thought to pursue that professionally or even recreationally outside of a school.
Mm.
And but a lot of my buddies and friends at the time were starting the whole like garage. We want to start bands. We want to play music. We all love reading Hit Parade and watching 120 Minutes type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I think I bought, or a buddy of mine just let me borrow a guitar, and I strummed it a couple times a week, and I was like, oh wow, this is kind of tough. I don't like this. And then somebody was just like, well, try a bass. And then I got to borrow somebody else's bass for like a week, and I kind of like a bass. So me and my best friend at the time went in on a bass, and I kind of played bass a little bit here and there. But nothing really stuck with any of the people I was just like practicing, not even practicing, just like goofing around with in a garage. Um, and because everybody else was just like, I play guitar and I've been playing guitar lessons for like 2 years. And so they're naturally going to be a little bit better. And I ended up just finding an old Casio and plugging it into a guitar, practice amp that you could drive it a little bit and make the speaker sound distorted. And I kind of just started there, um, and really tried to figure out how electronic production music stuff works. And I found, as I was going through my parents' house a couple years ago, I found this like binder scrapbook, and this is how much of a nerd I am. And in that was clippings of just like random music equipment that I found in a newspaper classified ad. And I was like, it would be like Yamaha QX F5 FD sequencer, and I just circle it. And there was like notes by it. I'm just like, what is a sequencer? And it was like, look up at the library later. Like, I didn't really have access to really research a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's how I kind of like stumbled upon into that. So that was around that era where I feel like I was like jamming and performing with a few folks and few friends, but really had no idea what I was doing, but still had a chance to like be in an environment that was like, people are just like, sure, go for it.
Yeah. This sounds like, to a lot of younger folks, I bet it sounds like a medieval version of a Pinterest board or something. You know, like, which Pinterest board is probably medieval to some folks these days. Like that, like people still do that shit. I don't know, but yeah, it's wild. You know, not musical necessarily, but I still have a folder of photocopies and things that I cut out from like Nintendo Power, or like or game, the whatever magazine it was that you got for GameStop with your $15 a year subscription, Game Informer. Yeah, that's it. Like, I had, every time I would get these and I'd be done with them, then I'd go through with them, or like books I'd get from the library, I'd make a photocopy of a page that really, and I have these folders full of art references that are like that. It's like, and now it's just like you go on Google, you know, and you just like, you're like, I want to see somebody doing a kickflip, and you just go on Google and you're like, okay, now I can draw somebody doing a kickflip because I see how everything works. But like, you know, back then it was like, oh, like this, the perspective of this big hulking monster is like perfect. Like, so let me cut that out and save it for when I need like that type of perspective to reference, you know, or whatever. And so, yeah, like, I imagine there's still people that do those kinds of things. And I know that people still do that with like, people still have folders full of, you know, digital files that they keep for that reason. I've heard them called assets, and if I had started this conversation by calling them assets, I'm sure I'd sound really in the know and sophisticated right now. But we're not there. We're getting there after the fact, like I always do. But yeah, it is. I do. You know, there's so much of that era that I genuinely miss, where it's like, you know, you had to find out what you're into in these real wild roundabout manners, and I imagine that's still sort of the case, you know, like you start researching one thing, you get onto another thing, you know, but it's like, it's weird to have all those steps in writing, as it were, you know, to where you're like, you follow the breadcrumbs like on the page, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there, I told you before that I did a lot. I did some digging and tried to find out, like, you know, what bands you were in, and you know, the sort of like the first couple bands that I saw, like there was Polyon, and you had a couple releases. What did you do in that band? Was that like keyboard related as well, or?
Yeah, Polyon was pretty recent, actually.
It was. I thought the way, you know, the way that it was laid out, it looked like that was a long time ago. And yeah, I thought that was strange because the production quality was very clear, and then, like, just in retrospect, being like, okay, there's, you know, Danse El Capitan, and then there's that, and I'm supposed to believe that, you know, Polyon was first. Like I should have, looked into that a little more. But um,
No, it's fine. Polyon, I say was a long time ago, but it started like 10 years ago in 2014. So that was the mid 2010s.
okay, is that
Yeah.
kind of an on and off project that you might find your way back to, or is that just kind of like we made these
Um,
songs and they're cool?
I feel like that band is more or less officially retired. I think it kind of left on not weird terms, but terms where we still had some unfinished recordings and stuff like that. And it's like also one of those things where if we ever find ourselves all in the same city, then I wouldn't discount us getting back together and playing together.
Sure.
Pollyanna was really cool, only because it was, after Mass Movement the Moth was done, I did some life things and soul searching, and finally in 2014ish, I was just like, oh, I really feel like I want to play music again. And I don't know what I missed more, the actual writing music and playing live, or just like the connection you have with people and the friendships that you form and the relationships that you and other people form with the music at the same time is just such an empowering and confusing thing at almost all times. And I think I just kind of missed that. So old friend of mine, Ryan, who was the singer and guitarist of Polyon, I met him through another old band that he was in that was on the Exotic Fever Records label that put out some of the Mass Movement of the Moth stuff done by like your friend Katie Otta ran it. And so I just think I noticed one day on Facebook, he's like trying to start a new 3-piece kind of like overblown grungy. I think that was the big thing at the time in the mid 2010s was a lot of like post grunge was starting to get really, really big. And so I think that was like our take at post grunge. And it was Ryan who has an amazing voice and is really good at guitar. But if you look at his history before that, it was just like more of like a folk punk band and then just like a metalcore band and things like that. That Ryan is an amazing musician and can do a lot. So I had no idea how Polly would shake out. And then when I met up with Ryan to be like, hey, let's talk about music, a good old friend of mine, Brandon, was like there waiting. And he's like, I'm a surprise. And he was the one playing drums. And it was somebody that I already had a really good friendship with. And everything just kind of fell together really nicely in that. So I like to describe Polyon as Ryan would write these kind of fun grunge, almost like sludge poppy songs and riffs. And then I on both keyboards and bass synthesizers, and then Brandon on drums. We were just trying to fuck up his songs as much as possible. I can just try Polyon.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was Mass Movement of the Moth more or less your first band, or?
No, so one of the bands that I ended up, or a group of people that I ended up playing with in high school, we ended up putting a name and had a couple songs and a couple recordings called Shiny Monkey Theory.
Okay.
I was in high school, like it was bad. The only thing I don't even have the tracks. I wish I did and wish I didn't. I only have some pictures, and it's just like us performing in an ice skating rink and things like that. It was like that style. And it was weird. It was like our singer and bass player wanted to be nu metal, which was like big at the time. This is 1999 when this band was active. And the guitarist, one of my best friends in the world in my life, Clint, was playing guitar. And then we didn't have a drummer, but I finally figured out sequencers. So I was sequencing drums. And I imagine it was just a mess. But for some reason, we kept getting invited to shows. And it would be like all of our buddies, like, first pop punk bands, and then it would just be like our train wreck of weird industrial nu metal synthesizers and drums type of thing.
it's always that first band that has some name like, what did you say? Shiny Monkey?
Shiny Monkey Theory.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the name of a guitar from a documentary where they talked about their guitars of that band Filter. If you remember Filter, who sang "Hey Man, Nice Shot."
Yeah, the one with the T2's brother in it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so it's named after Brian Luskin's guitar that he kind of showcases the other person in Filter at the time.
Wild.
Uh, yeah, and so that was kind of like the first band that kind of played out a little bit. That ended up going until I graduated high school, which was in 2001. And from there, I went to college, and I played around in a couple acts at the time, maybe one or two shows, but I had joined a couple people playing like more pop punk stuff because I wanted the Get Up Kids anniversary rentals feeling.
Uh-huh.
I could just never get there. And at the time, I was definitely so college. Let me backing up. College at the time was the first time I got high-speed internet, and it was the first time I came across a bunch of people that were really into sharing music, and in the way that you could like click on somebody's name and you could say see shared files. And in the shared files, like all my buddies would be like, here's our recommended tracks, here's our recommended jams. And that's kind of how I did a lot of music discovery initially once I got high-speed internet. So getting into that in 2001, I got wind of a lot of like Screamo and Scram stuff from then. And then I kind of started going to a lot of those type of shows and seeing a lot of those really good bands. And a few buddies of ours, like my first real college band that actually toured was Danse, Capitan.
Okay.
A lot of us trying to like figure out like how Screamo works, us just being like, man, transistor is so cool. And I'm like, well, how can I bring like a trillion barnacle lapse elements to it? Like old head Screamo stuff was kind of like what influenced us. And we had our buddy who was the singer at the time. He's not on any recordings because he left the band pretty early, but he kind of got us all together and was just like, Adam, you play bass, Clint, you play guitar, Adam, you play drums. And we're like, and we're just going to book a show. We're just going to write some Screamo music. And he was like that force that just pushed us to just be like, okay. And then that's kind of how Danse got started.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't recall hearing any kind of keyboards or synth in that. So that was your return to a stringed instrument. Did that, like, did you just were like, I don't have a choice, or it's just like we can write stuff that I can work with, or did you just like really grind yourself to get to the point where you were comfortable doing that, or?
I don't think I've gotten to a point of being comfortable playing bass. I am amazing at playing bass when I'm sitting down, but I never mastered playing bass standing up.
Yeah.
It's weird because I was like interested in keyboards, but like honestly, in the early 2000s, if you played keyboards and like heavy music, people just looked at you funny and thought you're going to play like Locust, but in an annoying way style music. And so, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, our band in 2002, from 2002 to 2004 was keyboards, but it was piano. So
nice.
It wasn't, yeah, I'm not sure that, but it was like melodic Screamo, like I'm not sure that people knew what was going to happen when we showed up. So we all, yeah, we all just were like we were all really like laid back, like casual looking people. Like we didn't look cool. I still don't look cool. But so like, yeah, but it was definitely like, that vibe was there that you're talking about, where like everyone kind of half expected, Horse the Band or, Locust or, just like, like, if somebody showed up with a keyboard, someone was setting the curtains on fire at that show for sure, kind of thing. But
unless somebody with extravagant 70s clothes walk in, you're like, oh, cool, it's just going to be an albatross. They'll be good. But I think at Danse Capitan, I was like happy trying to play bass because I don't feel like I came into my own as like a musician. Like I don't think I became like a regular player of any instrument at the time. So I was like, still like exploring and chasing that. And even though I was struggling with Dance or Capitan, I like I fell in love with just like DIY, just like the idea of DIY and the communities around it. Um, and just that anybody can do anything. So it's just like I could book a tour, and so I tried to book a tour within like us after having like 3 shows. I just got on like I think it was Level Plane message board at the time and tried to get us a couple shows on the East Coast.
Yeah.
It was just really cool to just live within and explore and realize like how easy it was to do some of these big things. And it really, I think Dance like Capitan was more important for me from that aspect. I'm just like, this is how it works. This is how being like a functioning musician and going on these little tours and putting up your MP3s sort of works. This is great. I love this.
Yeah. That part where, you know, people were just sort of assigned roles in the band also resonates with me, because that's how my first screamo band started. It was just like there were 2 guys that played guitar and couldn't do anything else, and we knew that we wanted to rip off the Crimson Curse. So like we needed someone that was going to play organ or synth, and our friend worked at Goodwill and was like, I just found one in the trash.
Yes.
And we were like, found one in the trash, or you put it in the trash so you can go back and get later. And he's like, put it in the trash so I can go back and get later. But and that's how that was. It was just like, well, I guess I'll play drums because, you know, no one else is going to do that. And, you know, so I bought a drum kit, and then it was like, you know, and then my partner at the time was like, well, I'll play bass. Like, you know, I've always wanted to play bass, and, that was that. And, yeah, I don't know. Like, the fun part of that was the review from MRR at the time, which said, I don't think these people even know how to play their instruments, but it rules. And I was like, it's awesome that they thought it rules, but they were absolutely right about the other thing. We did not know. We literally just started, and we were in a studio with 10 songs like 3 months later. But yeah,
and you all got reviewed by MRR. That's a win to me. That's amazing.
I mean, you know, we had a 7-inch, and it came out posthumously because, you know, too many people in the band had oral sex with each other at some point in time, and, you know, the relationships were. I mean, it sounds bad. It really. It was the oral sex had nothing to do with the band's breaking up, but I just think it's funny how many no one in the band's gonna be mad that I am airing this. Like, it was like if anything, when they hear this, they're like laughing their ass off, because this stuff would just come up so casually, and it would just be like the people that you would not expect. And, you know, I won't name names, but it's just like I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I thought I was the weirdest person in this band, and is so not me. But yeah, I don't know. That was a time and a place for that.
I feel like you could make like that Grandpa Simpson's meme where he's talking about tying an onion to his belt and this like crazy long-winded story. I feel like you could put in a caption that's like, so we released our vinyl posthumously after we broke up, which was the style at the time. Because I feel like
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's too many people were in too many bands. Too many people had oral sex with one another. You know, people said mean things about the other bands the other people were in, but like everybody said mean things about everybody's other band. When it was just like the most not toxic to be like in the same room, but it was like everyone's behavior was so toxic, you know, like, and everybody's like probably still friends like now. Like, I talk to like almost everyone in the band like pretty regularly, except for like, you know, 2 people. So I talk to 60%. Maybe that's not that good. Maybe I don't. I talk to 60% of the band regularly, but I love them.
Yeah.
It was a great band, great times. The late '90s, they were a thing. But that's enough lore out of me. I I think that we should talk more about Mass Movement of the Moth. I think you should let me do a cassette discography for you, putting you on the spot there. But I really think that should happen. Um, I has that not happened? There's not been a discography release for that band.
No, I don't think so. That's really wonderful of you to say, and I'll definitely take it back. I haven't seen our bass player in quite some time, but I saw both Joey and Ashley. They're in Philly. They Ashley booked. Joey and Ashley were also in Master of the Moth. They booked a Prisoner show last month with Sanagi and Half Cross, and that was a really fucking good show. So
Oh yeah, Sanagi rips. Yeah.
that was the first modern screamo in these times, and I think of this in the 2020s era. That gave me goosebumps performance wise. I was just like, oh shit, and I was like, oh my god, there's the love. The love is coming back for this.
Yeah.
It was all due to them. That was amazing. They put on a hell of a show.
I bet everyone in that band is like, pretty, like pretty dear friend of mine, and also like just literally top tier talent. Like it's ridiculous. Um,
Yeah. But
but
no Moth discography has come out. I love the internet, so I've always made sure that all of our shit's up there, available. We even have like a posthumous website up that you can download stuff if you don't want to. If you want to bypass some of the streaming giants and stuff like that.
yeah, I
But
get
I'm
it.
not opposed. I would be into it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk some more about that. Like I would love to do that. Dance El Capitan never like you don't. I noticed when I was going through, I was like, oh, I found Polyon on Bandcamp. I found Mass Movement on the Moth. But Dance like I was only able to just find stuff on YouTube.
Oh,
And yeah, that really was like the band that of yours that like I'd never heard of that band, and I listened and I was like, yeah, this is really like you said we were trying to figure out like what screamo was or whatever, like however you put it. I'm not trying to quote you, but like that's basically, and I think there's such a charm to that. Just like you don't really know like what is this that we're trying to do, and I think there's such a charm to that, and um I think I only listened to the demo, which was 4 songs. I know there was 2 things, and I don't think I was able to find the other one like just right away or whatever.
no, you found 4/5 of our entire recorded output, so you did well.
Oh, okay. That's it. The 4 songs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, not to sell it short. It's 4 songs, but it's like 14 minutes, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I know it's on Spotify.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just found it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's 40. Yeah, it's that long.
Yeah,
Good.
and but Discogs said that there were 2 things, so I guess like you released them like on like 2 versions, like for tours or something, huh? Something like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think in our grand DIY journey, or my own grand DIY journey at the time, it was slow moving writing songs, but it was a lot of fun. And like I said, we didn't know what we were doing too much. So I think we were together for only 3 years, and then we had a couple shows that we got back together for in 2006, kind of riding some of the Moth coattails at the time. And the band started out as a 5-piece, actually, and we lost our singer, so we kind of had a setback there. We wanted to kind of rewrite some of the songs, but we also did pick up a keyboardist really quickly. And it's only because, again, I saw this in that Filter documentary. The guitarist was stepping on a keyboard to activate sample loops over MIDI. And so that was his way of creating a bunch of weird sound sets. So I was trying to do that in Danse El Capitan, but I failed horribly because I had no idea what I was doing on that side of the world as well. But we ended up having a buddy of ours play keyboards for a couple of shows, and that was a lot of fun. So anyways, we only had 2 recording sessions, and in those recording sessions, we only had a chance to record 2 songs per session. And that's kind of where it was. The last two songs we recorded was supposed to be on a split with Black Castle, which was like a more slower down synth band from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And we had played a bunch of shows with them. We're into putting out a split. But I think the idea of that split in those recordings kind of fell off because I think either Black Castle broke up or we were destined to break up. And then we decided just to slap them on the last tour EP that we put together. And that's what those 4 songs on that EP are.
I don't think I ever remember hearing Black Castle, but I think they did a tour with The Dream Is Dead, which is why I know the name.
Sounds right. They also did a split with A Day in Black and White when A Day in Black and White was moving from being more metalcore to a more City of Caterpillar, like post rock screamo band.
Yeah, we played. Chameleon played with them when after their first LP. I don't know what LP it is, but like,
Yeah.
I was there something about cowboys in the name or something?
My heroes have always been
Yeah,
cowboys.
yeah, that LP. We played with them at a skate park, and that bass player had just like an absolutely bonkers like pedal board, and I was just like, I came out with my pedal board. I was the guitar player. I came out and I was like, and we played our little set, and I had like, I don't know, like I had like a DL6,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like I had like 2 distortions, one's for sort of halfway distortion, the other one's like full chunk, and then
Sure.
and I had like a tuner, and I'm like, yeah, cool, I got some pedals, and then and then the bass player comes out, and he has like 3 volume pedals or something. He's got like he's got a flange, he's got this, he's got that, he's got the other thing. I'm like, I think only to be outdone later by the bass player for oh my gosh, now I'm spacing on Murder by Death. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that bass player, this was before they went alt country or whatever, but like, I mean, I still think they're a good band, don't get me wrong, but like before they went,
So good.
yeah,
So good. Oh my God.
they came out, and the bass player threw down a pedal board that was like it was the size of a 412 guitar cab laid down on flat on the floor. It was that big, and he called it the Death Star.
Of course.
Like, and I was just like looking at this thing, and I was like, I have no idea what this does. And like, it felt like he used like every effect on it while they played. They were like an indie rock band at the time. If you're familiar with, like, just before
Sure.
they sort of turned like sort of that like alt country corner, they were called Little Joe Gould,
Mm-hmm.
and that's more like the style that they played when we saw them play. But yeah, like pedal, like I still don't. I have more pedals than I ever have in my life, but like they're all, they're $20 pedals. They're not like I can't get those. Like I can't have a long sword or whatever, like those. That's one of those Earthquaker pedals is worth as much as all of my pedals put together. But they're fun. It's like I
In,
said.
in Prisoner, we have 2 guitarists, and one is definitely, oh my God, look at my fucking pedal board. And it's amazing. And he creates some amazing sounds. He can run in stereo, he can run in mono. We can process stuff through his pedal board, which was like the source of a lot of the samples I do in Prisoner. Just like lots of fun with him. And then the other guitarist is just like playing through solid states and through like 2 heavy metal boss pedals. And he's got a few token delay pedals. I think one of them is a Behringer. He's like, this is my board, and it's definitely like a dichotomy between the 2 approaches, and they both sound so good in their own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, I think that sort of like sums. Now, I'm not sure if both of those guitar players have been in the band the whole time, so maybe this is like a false comparison. But I feel like that sums up like the difference between y'all's first release and y'all's latest. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you could see that. You're like, the first one, you're like, okay, this band really fucks with His Hero is gone.
Yeah.
And like the elements that come in later are still there. You know what I mean? And also the His Hero is gone stuff is still there now. But like, do you know what I'm saying? It's just like they're further apart, like than then like they're further apart than not.
Right.
Like it's still there, but it's like you can see where this came and where this came. And if you take the journey between those bookended releases, you see how it all became, what it is. But yeah, I y- I wasn't sure like when we first started chatting like I said, I saw y'all always playing with like my friends' bands in Richmond and stuff, and I'm like, I gotta check this band out. I gotta check this band out.
Mhm.
And then I'm one of those people that can't go into a record store without having stuff written down, because
Me
like
too.
I
I
forget what
get
I'm
so
looking
far.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of the same thing with like I never listened to Prisoner, because like I'd be like, oh, that like Gift from God's playing with them again. Like I gotta check them out sometime, and just didn't, right? And then finally did,
Mhm.
and I'm like, holy shit, right? Um, but
Thank you.
in the beginning, you weren't in the band, right?
No, no, I've only joined the band kind of at the end of 2020, so it's only
Okay,
been a couple of years for me. And that first album of theirs came out in 2016, so
right, right.
pretty far separated from that, which is a bummer because I wish I knew more into what went into that band. I love band chemistry, and watching friends have a relationship with music is like super interesting, and it's kind of like won me over in genres I never expect myself to like until I saw friends playing that type of genre type of thing. So I kind of wish, with everything I know about the group of people in Prisoner today, what it was like in 2016 and how that album came about. I would love to know that.
Yeah. Well, the Bandcamp page says that the first thing was 2013.
Right. So there was a couple EPs prior to that as well.
Okay, so they're out even before 2013. So this is like another 10 plus year project. And then what from your point of view, like what happens to where they're like, okay, we need to ask Adam to be in the band.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like two things were pretty pivotal to that. Um, so when Prisoner started out, I think it was around 2012. It was always it started as a four piece, and it included Pete, the main guitarist and vocalist, Joel on drums, and then Justin, who is our bass player now. He was just a vocalist at the time, and then they had another person, Tommy, playing bass. Um, Second guitarist kind of floated in and out of the band between 2012 until that second EP release, where he became more of a full time person, and it was more of a five piece. And then in 2016, when they recorded and did Beyond the Infinite and kind of toured on that, it was still a same five piece. I think Beyond the Infinite, Pete and Justin brought in a lot of keyboard and sampling and drum work, which is on that album. In live, it would be between Pete and Justin to play. But Tommy, their bass player, ended up being out of the band around 2019. And at that time, Justin, the vocalist that's always been a Prisoner, started playing bass and then sharing a lot of his vocal duties amongst the other guitar players. And so I think they were kind of rattling around as a four piece for a while before they finally reached out and asked me to be in it. Because I think they were trying to figure out, because they wanted to do a lot more of like the industrial stuff. They wanted to get heavier in that sort of direction. And at that time, I had been playing with both Pete and Justin in a Nine Inch Nails cover band, like a really punk forward Richmond only sort of entity where we would only come together for a few shows across a multiple span of years. And so I kind of helped put together this like Nine Inch Nails cover band back in 2017, I think was the first time. I was living in Richmond again. It was right after Polyon. I was like hungry to play music. And it was like I always wanted to have a reason to like backwards engineer Nine Inch Nails songs. I don't know why. It's been a pain, but it's been so rewarding at the same time. So Pete and Justin were in the Nine Inch Nails band, and I kind of met them through there. I knew about them prior. We have a bunch of mutual friends. I think they even saw Danse back in like 2003 in Northern Virginia type of things. But since playing with them in the Nine Inch Nails cover band, they were just like, I think they were just like, hey, we're sick of being a four piece. We need some fresh, perspective in here. Let's just ask Adam to be in the band. And that's how apparently I got on their radar to be asked to be in Prisoner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the newest album, Putrid Obsolete, like I think it's absolutely wild how, you said like reverse engineered, and I think that's a perfect way to describe some of the songs, because to me, it's like the riffs that drive the songs. Once the riffs are there, it's like, from the outside looking in, it sounds like it's like there's all this intentionality, there's all this like careful planning with sort of like, this is too soon to do the riff, or this is like when we need to take the riff away, or and so it really surprised me, honestly, going from that and being like, yes, this is a group of people that write this album with the electronics in the top of mind, right? They're structuring a lot of what happens organically with the guitars and stuff around what's going to happen with the electronics, and so it was strange to be like, oh, this wasn't always like this, but
Yeah.
but like in a good way, but like, so how much, like, you said it was a pain in the ass, you're like, to sort of reverse engineer this, so is that the part that was a pain in the ass, where it's just like, how
Oh,
do
I
you
thought it was
create all this, like, how much like math was involved, like we're doing this 8 times, this 16 times, like stuff like that, or
yeah, that's an interesting journey and a little bit of a challenge. So just to clarify, the pain in the ass part was talking about reverse engineering the Nine Inch Nails songs. It's just like, how do I get this Iggy Pop sample of Nightclubbin' to sound like the bass intro sample opener for like Closer? That was like what was
oh
kind of like a pain in the ass for me.
oh
Um, but Putrid Obsolete, I felt like probably should have came out sooner, and it was challenging and a struggle for me to reinvent my approach to music and reinvent myself as like a musician, because I didn't ever do samples like I do today, and it was something I really, really tried to push myself to do. And it was I feel like I dragged my feet a lot, and I had a lot of stumbles and missteps trying to figure out how to approach writing keyboards and synthesizers and samples in this sort of like bed of extreme music that the rest of the band was presenting and pushing for, right? Like, I'm not too familiar with overly complex extreme metal genres or token bands. Like, I can talk my way around like Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that, but that's about it,
mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of experimentation. So I'm glad you picked up on the intentionality of it all, because I think we had to do that because there was just too many ideas. So I think it's a little bit two-pronged, because there was another aspect where I've always looked to these like examples of what I consider like perfect albums where everything seems so intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to bring that to Putrid Obsolete, because it was a presentation of a lot of interesting material, but it's also kind of challenging, and it was super challenging to figure out a pacing to that album, right?
yeah
So Radiohead's OK Computer is like a perfect album, front to back. Every single thing is like intentionally perfectly placed in that album. And there's just like other reference points I can point to for that sort of stuff. But that was kind of like what I really wanted out of like anything I kind of record moving forward, is just to make sure that there's no missteps that are kind of like not thought through properly, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Some may call that being a professionalist or a perfectionist or an asshole. I don't know.
want to stop there and take a second to ask about. You said there were a lot of ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of like something that's been banging around in my brain a lot. Is like, so you're saying like this was challenging because there's a lot of ideas. So are you sort of like, it's like the hard part is saying no to certain ideas, the hard part is saying we have to decide and we have to stick with that, like, because I think that that's something that a lot of artists in any medium like struggle with, right? Is just like the options are, until you start doing it, like there's the blank page, right? And it's all perfect and it's all whatever. But eventually you have to make some decisions, and once you make those decisions, then you think you're going to ruin it. But like you're not. You know what I mean? Because the other thing is just not doing it, right? Not making any
Mm-hmm.
decisions is not doing it. So is that what you mean by it was challenging because there's so many ideas, or it's just like because you have to decide and you have to narrow it down, or
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think personally, I didn't struggle with that. I have no problem kind of. I think the horrible term for that is like killing your darling or whatever. It's just
sure,
like
sure.
you might love an idea, but it doesn't fit in the grand context or the scheme of things. So you need to be like the first one to be like, hey, this isn't working in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally think I really have too much of a problem with that. I guess to I think some of the challenges were for me, like as I approached, doing live keyboards and really trying to get into samples and some sequencing and some production elements that I could pull off live and things like that. That was really fun. It was more figuring out what some of the songs needed, um, and trying to figure out how to make it so. And this sounds like a really weird, extremely selfish goal, but I didn't want to have a song where I wasn't touching a keyboard
Yeah.
in the skit. And so I think it was more just like searching for like how do I insert myself in a way that really either I don't know, like a third of the time I feel like I'm part of like the riffing, and a third of the time I feel like I'm in the background but I'm helping build a foundation, and then like a third of the time I'm doing like drums and sequencing and kind of like more production elements. And so it's just more like, have I found the right moments for myself to exist in the craziness that the rest of this band is bringing? That was
Yeah.
kind of extreme. So it'd be more like, oh, I wrote a super busy part, but if I just hold one note, it sounds cooler because it's just giving yourself like a sense of like a disharmony.
Yeah.
Or I wrote a really crazy part and it's like, a bunch of 16th notes. I repeat it like 8 times for the verse. And it would be like the drummer just being like, yeah, what if you just played it once and just like time stretched the note placement? And I'd be like, oh, that's genius. And it was just like little things like that of like how to make things fit a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think what might be interesting is when I came in 2020, it was the end of 2020, I guess that's when I joined. Lockdown kind of was still happening for us. And so we were still kind of dealing with some quarantine stuff as well. The 4-piece, I don't know if Tommy, the old bass player, was on these recordings or not. They had previously done some like scratch tracking of a lot of these songs, but not in the formation that ended up in Putrid Obsolete. But I had a bunch of material, and we had an open mind about how we can kind of rebuild this in this sort of like 5-piece, more synth-centric sort of moment for Prisoner as a band.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like a lot of like homework I could do, and I think that's what was challenging, was just trying to like do that locked away in my little room and not being able to like organically talk and feel things out in a practice space to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. And
Yeah.
that was more of the challenge. It was really cool though. We got to like dissect and Frankenstein and be like, oh, this one like sequence drum part that Pete wrote, can I kind of take a stab at that instead? And then we would like blow it out. And those dudes are all super amazing musicians in the sense that like some of those songs and some of those riffs were like, they came out of like what could have been like an hour's worth of jamming on just that riff type of thing. Like they can just go for it and explore and really kind of find the right footing for a lot of the songs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, and you can definitely hear it in the finished product, as it were. Like there, There's a lot. There's a lot of heavy music out there, and when I said intentionality, like that was the best way that I could have described it, at the time. But it's just like, yeah, there's such a thoughtfulness to the album and the way it flows and everything that really puts it on this like widescreen sort of epic scale, and I really appreciate that about it. Um, Before we sort of, we're gonna come back to Prisoner at the end. So,
Sure.
so we're gonna find out what y'all are doing next and stuff like that. But before we get there, I want to ask about your the T-shirt you're wearing on your Discogs page, and you might not even know what that is, but it's an Illusion of Gaia shirt.
Sure is.
And so, like, RPGs, like, is that are you are you an old head when it comes to that? Are you still involved in it? Are you still into it? Like, what's on your radar for oh, yeah, I'm getting video now, and I'm seeing the thermos, and it's just loaded with, Secret of Evermore, Chrono Trigger, all Super Mario RPG, but, Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, six is what I never fully got into, but I'm sort of like PlayStation 1 and past, and I always mean to go back to those ones that they re-released, but
Sure.
but I don't. But is that where you stay as far as RPGs go? Like back in the sort of,
Uh,
or do you
yeah.
get into the like Elden Ring and stuff?
More often these days, I gravitate back to like the Super Nintendo RPGs. My childhood was full of Super Nintendo love. That Illusion of Gaia shirt came from the bonus pack that you could get at the Toys R Us when that album first, or when that, not album.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about album bundles and getting T-shirt offers. No, when the game first came out at Toys R Us and going to get that was part of like the prepackaged bundle. And sadly, I was mugged many years later, and the person who was doing the mugging also decided just to beat the shit out of me. So they tore apart that shirt, and I miss it because all the shirts are like super sturdy, and that one was like perfectly threadbare and very comfy. Um, but I think after college and when I was doing more like real life stuff and I had a little bit more income, I got really into collecting video games. I kept following PlayStations and Xboxes and things like that. I think at that time, PlayStation 3 was out, and I tried to stay up to date. But I kind of felt like, and this is a continuous thing as becoming an adult, I don't have that much free time. And when I do have free time, I need to be a little bit more intentional about how I spend it.
Yeah.
And I just found that I could not keep up with all the video games. So what I did was I kind of sold everything I had because I had a lot of like vintage and other classic sort of consoles. And I just kind of doubled down on Super Nintendo. And I was like, this is the system that, on a bad day, I will pop in and kind of blow off some steam or process my emotions and thoughts while being distracted by this pixelated person trying to get their stored, higher experience points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like very simple-minded tasks at the end of the day compared to more modern gaming. So I always go back to Super Nintendo. I'm really into it, though. I'm really into people who have burnt, hacked ROMs back onto EPROMs and then put them back and loading them into physical cartridges and relabeling them and then putting them out and then playing that on my old school console. That is kind of the level of nerdydom I'm at, which is great because there's like a Sailor Moon RPG out there, and it was only ever translated to French for some reason in Japan. And so part of what you can kind of do is you can find these people who translated the entire game to English, and then you could get that. You can buy a cartridge where they burnt that on, and you're playing like a physical good. It's not like emulation. And it is a fan translation. It's phenomenal.
That's amazing. Yeah, we really like live in a wild like world as far as like stuff like that. Like there's like it's like this is, only tangentially related, but it's like my kid like got real into the newest Zelda game, and there's all
Yeah.
those like amiibos that you have to buy to get the certain items or whatever. But it's like people just like hack those things and just make little plastic cards that you can swipe on your Switch. Instead of buying 1 million amiibos, my wife bought like the entire set of amiibos on this little plastic cards for like $25.
Oh,
You know,
okay, yeah.
and it's like, and each amiibo costs like $15. So like it's a no brainer. Like, and then he's on there all day, like, oh, now I got like this armor set, I got this, thing, and you're just like, wow, like what a world, it's
Yeah.
just like this little plastic chip, and it's just telling the console that this is that amiibo. um but yeah, yeah, I've always been huge into games. They were a big part of my life growing up, and kind of still are, but I'm like you. I have to be like, i I can't let myself go down this rabbit hole too often, because I will just be like, oh, I turn around and I'm like, oh, I just played that for 5 hours. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have 5 hours to do that. But
I know. I want to do that without the guilt. And I'm like, one day I'll be able to do that. And I've just been chasing that dream ever since for like the past decade.
yeah,
Um,
there's like a wild idea that I've had, that like, when I retire, and that's the part that makes it wild, right? Because that'll like literally never happen. Like, no one's ever going to be allowed to retire again after like
yeah.
2025 or 2028, somewhere
Yeah.
around there. That idea is just going to be gone. But I'm just like, I'm going to read every comic book that I have, even though I've
Mhm.
read like 90% of them. I'm going to play all the games that I, have, like, that I bought over the years, like, and played 90% of them, like I said, but like, it's like, yeah, that fantasy of like getting there. But yeah,
What was really interesting is it's a photo from Moth days. And so I think at that time I was kind of had a little chip on my shoulder about being more of like an anti-punk. Like, I always wanted to like be a little bit more of an outsider, even though the entire community was full of outsiders. Like, I wanted to be just like a step further. So I was like, all right, here's my keyboard with like Nine Inch Nails and Illusion of Gaia, and here, listen to my weird screamo band. Like, that was kind of the vibe I was going for. But what was really interesting is there's a Moth song that ends with like an electric piano, just kind of hitting like quick 6 notes. And live, every so often, I would turn that into the main Force theme in Chrono Trigger, the one that's like bum 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 bum. And I would play that. I would play that live, just like as part of the outro to the song. And there was a few times where people just like looking at me kind of odd, and there'd be like two very overexcited people in the audience. Just, yes, yes. And I'm like, those are the people I'm excited to talk to next.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
You're
Yeah.
like, you're the reason I came. Yeah,
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 exactly.
absolutely.
It was really cool.
Um,
Did you want to talk about anything more Moth related at all?
Not necessarily. Like, I try to keep these at around an hour. Sometimes it's impossible, but
Sure.
I do try to keep them at that. Um, I I want to get back to Prisoner, just so we can sort of like, wrap it up. Like, I literally could sit here and just talk for hours and hours, but it's one of those things. That's why I try to set this limit. That's why I try to stick to it. And like, there's people upstairs that I need to cook dinner for, so
Sure.
there's all these reasons, right? But so like, Prisoner, that's the main focus of your creative energy and stuff. And you said that like Putrid Obsolete should have came out by now, sort of like, or maybe it should have, or however. So I take it that like you all have been sort of steady working on like more stuff. And I just want to see like, yeah, like, now that the record's been out for a little bit, like, what is, I saw tons of like tour dates, on the Bandcamp and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So like, is that what's going on? It's just like writing new material for the next album and doing some tours. Like, what's going, what can people expect from Prisoner coming up?
Sure, yeah. Well, so just a bit of history. It did take 7 years between Beyond the Infinite and Putrid Obsolete to come out. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping we will go a little bit quicker than that these days, but I can never say for sure. um, so I think since the album came out, we've been really pushing hard on just being show ready. And we've been rehearsing and practicing a lot of these songs. We've also been going back to Beyond the Infinite and trying to figure out how to play some of those songs with sort of the new arrangements and seeing if there's any big changes we want to do there because I'm not as intimately familiar with those songs, nor there's no static place for like my type of sounds and things. So I've been trying to figure that out. So that's been a good portion of our time. We're still kind of pushing and writing on Future Obsolete for a bit. Um, we're happy to tour more, but as we're all navigating being in our late 30s and early 40s and having day jobs and lives and families and trying to play, we've been being a little bit more choosy and picky about when we go out. Again, just to be intentional about it and make sure it's fun for everybody. So I think we're still looking to do that. We've been doing these like 1 week tours. We've been doing these long weekends. We've been trying to get out more regionally on the East Coast. Next year, we're gonna try to get out to California and do some West Coast action for a week or two, things like that. So I think we're still gonna be pushing on Future Obsolete for a while. We have a couple starts to songs. We've maybe have 4 ideas kicking around, and this has been interesting to me because this is the first time I've been in the writing room at inception of some of this sort of stuff. Everything else that was on Future Obsolete kind of came later, and I got to like fit myself around it. And there's a couple songs that I got to get into the DNA of, but these songs are like from the get-go I get to be part of the DNA from, which is really, really exciting for me. So we're not trying to like rush it. We're not trying to put pressure on ourselves. We just kind of want to gravitate how we do that. At the same time, our other guitarist, writes a lot of the more like storing, lighting kind of guitar stuff, he is in DC, and so he doesn't get to come to practice as often as everybody else down here in Richmond. So we're kind of taking it slow. We have some songs. We might play some of them sooner than later as new stuff. But I think in terms of recording it, trying to get something out, we're still trying to figure out what's next. There's been talk about putting together like an EP, potentially trying to have a little bit shorter of a full length, ideas like that. But I feel like that'll probably become a little bit more realistic in terms of tangible songs that we can play later in 2025 at this point. The one thing that I got to do in Mass Move the Moth, which had limited success, but I really want to try to do again, is the concept of a remix album. I think more of the time and the material is right for that. So I think I might personally be spearheading, putting together some friends and other artists remixing some of the Future Obsolete tracks, as well as trying to take my own stab at it as well. So that most likely will be like the next kind of like release for Future or for Prisoner.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. um, well, I mean, I guess we have that to look forward to. Are you,
Mm-hmm.
you're just trying to get, you're just trying to get them chopped up and screwed up as much as possible, or just like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, okay,
I like the old school industrial, Ministry, Nine Inch Nails aspect of remixing, where it's just like some of those tracks, it's just like built around 3 second clip of a reverb trail on the vocals, and some remix artists had created an entirely new track out of that. That's the style of like remixing that I personally love, and would love to see other people's interpretations of some
yeah,
of these ideas.
awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing what comes out of all that. But
Thank you.
do you have some shows coming up immediately that you want to plug before we take off here?
Sure. Sorry. Let me pull up a list. I have one somewhere.
I'll I'll edit this part here so it sounds like you
Thank
immediately
you.
knew what where your shows were and stuff.
Thank you. Because I'm
Yeah, yeah.
pulling up Discord and it's like, we need to install 4 updates. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, why is this the only source of truth for our company show? Um, Yeah, so in September we do have a good amount of shows. We're going to be doing a longer weekend out to Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, and North Carolina and Asheville in the beginning of September. In the middle of September, we are playing. We'll be playing a show or two with Fjorn, as well as the Dark Days, Bright Nights Fest, which is the big fest that Paul and Persistent Vision and Mike Taylor from Page 99 and Pygmy Lush are putting on, the 3-day fest in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very grateful and lucky to be playing Sunday on that. So thank you, Paul, and the great powers to be, and thank you, Mike Taylor. Really appreciate it. We're oddly have the privilege of being able to play with Darkest Hour in Harrisonburg, so we're going to be doing that on September 23rd. And then in October, we're playing a couple Richmond local shows that are just starting to get announced, and we're continuously lining up some other kind of out of Richmond dates for October and November. And then, like I said, early spring, late winter of next year, 2025, we'll be coming out to the West Coast and at least taking on most of Southern California.
And that was my conversation with Adam Lake. Thank you so much, Adam, for taking the time to chat with me. I really had a blast, and I hope the same for anyone listening, wherever you are. Until next time, take care and do good things.